Hi everybody, I'm Joey. Today I'll be making these awesome cedar and rosewood barn doors. So this is the rosewood and the rough sawn, and this whole design is based from my client who drew everything up, Pete, and he wanted to come and help me on the job. So I thought, yeah, sure, come and work on it a little in the workshop. So first thing was just to get it some pieces dressed up. So the stock is 50mm, and the rails and the top rail and the stiles will be 70mm thick. And so I'm ripping one of my 50mm pieces in half, and I'm going to glue up these 25mm pieces to the 50mm stock and give me some nice heavy stiles. So it can be pretty tricky gluing rosewood. It's fairly oily timber. These pieces weren't too bad. One of the pieces was a little oily. So I'm just going to clean it off with a bit of thinners and try and wipe off some of the surface oil. And I'm using Gorilla Glue here because they're going to be largely exterior doors. I want to have a waterproof glue, and so I'm also just using water as a catalyst. That really helps the Gorilla Glue go off, which seems a bit ironic that you're using water in the glue, but that seems to work really well. And I've used Gorilla Glue pretty extensively in the past, so I've never really had a problem with it, and it seemed to work really well. And while that's all gluing up, I'm just dressing down the 50mm cedar stock down to 44mm, I think it had to be, and just sanding it through on the sander, which makes a really nice finish on the cedar actually. And after the rosewood comes out of the clamps, I'm just dressing up one face, and then I'll rip it to width and give the whole lot of sanding through the sander as well. And I'm just cutting the stiles to length, and there's a kind of a unique detail to the base of these doors where the concrete floor, where they're going to be hanging above, has a rebate in it, and so I need to have a notch in the bottom of my doors. That's what I'm just cutting here, and actually it works out as a really good design in that it's really waterproof design, so quite an interesting way to do external doors. And I'm just cutting a groove in the side of the stiles. This will be for the weather strip, like a little rubber weather strip that just pressure fits into that groove. That's on the outside of the stiles, and on the inside I'm routing this larger groove, and that is for the cedar TG&V to slide into, and I'll have to make a custom tongue on the TG&V on each side of the door. And this is Pete here with the router, and we made up this jig so we can route out the mortises and the rails pretty easily and quickly. They're pretty large and there's a few of them to do, and this actually worked really well. Very simple jig, and I was pretty impressed at how accurate and how easy it was to route some big mortises. While Pete was making the mortises, I started on cutting the tenons, and this is in the cedar. And I cut my tenons about 2mm too thick for the mortise. That way I can fit them with the hand plane, just so there's a snug fit, and it seems to work really well. And because the mortises have the rounded corners, I decided just to round off my tenons. It's much easier than rounding off the mortises nice and square. And actually worked really well. The tenons still fitted really snugly, so I was happy with that. So this is the first dry fit of the door, and Pete is just working on the angle braces, and quick lesson on the drop saw there, and then Pete gets into it. And there was a little confusion on the angles on the diagonal cross brace. I think it was a result of a little overthinking, but it worked out in the end. Personally, I would have liked to tenon in these cross braces, but Pete had done a lot of reading about making these kinds of doors, and he said it would be just fine with a pressure fit, so that's what we did. And now Pete is routing out for the hinges, and we decided to do all this before the rails and everything were glued up, and I think it was much easier to do that on the bench than on the side of the big door. And I'm just adding some wax to my screw. Given that rosewood's pretty hard, just want to let the stainless have something to ease the friction a little bit, and it works really well. And now for the glue up, which actually went pretty smoothly. Again, I was using the epoxy that I like to use, and yeah, we just took our time and everything fitted just perfectly. The doors actually ended up, both of them being exactly the same, exactly square, and I was really happy. And next I just had to rip down the cedar TGMV, one board on each side of the door, so I had a equal spaced paneling, and just had to make a small tongue on the top of those TGMV panels that fits into the top of the door rail. And once this was all laid out, Pete came along and added stainless steel screws into the bottom and the middle rail, because the top of the TGMV is tongue and grooved in, and it looked really good. So this is on site now, and I'm just routing out for the hinges, and that went fairly smoothly. And we just had to kind of shimmy the door into position. It's a fairly heavy unit. And I've just put the door on some really big wedges, and that way we can just lift the door up and down into position just by adjusting the wedges. And it takes a little bit of time, but it's a really easy way of getting a heavy thing to sit right where you need it to. And it fit perfectly. And Pete added the weather strip groove into the grooves that we cut right at the start, and that was really the end of it. It's going to add some way to lock the doors in the future. Thanks for watching, everyone.